Welcome to the first video in this series, in which I will give a virtual tour of the Shwedagon Pagoda. In this video, we will explore the history and culture of Myanmar through examining the Buddhist imagery on display at the site. Covered in up to 27 tons of gold and rising 99 meters above a 190-meter tall hill, the Shwedagon Pagoda is the oldest, largest, most famous, and most venerated pagoda in Myanmar. To understand the history and the culture behind the pagoda and its artwork, you need an understanding of recorded history and archaeology, but also folklore and oral tradition. I will do my best in this video to walk us through the history and culture of Myanmar, as represented in the artwork of the Shwedagon Pagoda. The architectural organization of the layers of the Shwedagon is the plinth, the ledges, the octagonal ridges, the circular bands, the bell's rim, the bell, the girdle, the inverted alms bowl with festoons, the upper and lower tender lotuses, the inverted lotus petals, the glass bosses, the upper and lower boss moldings, the upturned lotus petals, the under banana bud taza, the banana bud, the tea, the screw pine flower, the vein, and finally the diamond bud. The vein at the top of the Shwedagon is encrusted with over 2,000 assorted gemstones. The diamond orb above it is adorned with 4,351 diamonds. The entire structure is topped with a single 76-carat diamond. The legendary origins of the pagoda state that, in the time of Gautama Buddha, circa 500 BC, two Mon brothers, Tapusa and Balika, were traveling as merchants through India and met him. They recognized the Buddha as an important holy person and offered him a donation of honey cakes as a donation of alms. The Buddha, in repayment, brushed his hand through his hair and gave the brothers 8 hairs from his head. Later, the brothers took the hairs to the ruler of the area where they were from, King Okalapa of Dagon, who then built the Shwedagon to house the relics. They say that, when he was about to commit the relics somewhere inside the maze of tunnels and caves below the Shwedagon, 3 other relics from the previous Buddhas of the present Kalpa, our historical era, magically appeared, meaning that the Shwedagon is said to house the relics of the 4 Buddhas of this age. We'll discuss those Buddhas and their relics shortly. The only archaeological excavation of the area around the Shwedagon was done by the British in the early 20th century. They found evidence that the earliest date of permanent habitation in the area was in the first few centuries of the first millennium AD. This correlates with the rise of Myanmar's first monument and city builders further north, the Pew, so it sounds like a reliable estimate. The historian Tant Mien U observed that it's possible that a pagoda in some form could have existed on the site before the area was permanently settled. So this doesn't necessarily contradict the traditional account. The original Shwedagon didn't look anything like it does today. The earliest written account of the Shwedagon dates from 1362 AD, when King Binya U of the Mon Kingdom of Hintawadi found the pagoda in a state of disrepair and raised it to a height of 18 meters in the process of renovation. In the mid-15th century, several rulers of Hintawadi maintained and enlarged it, raising it to a height of 40 meters and gilding it for the first time. By that time, it was the most famous Buddhist pilgrimage site in Burma. In 1775, King Myetshin of the Konbaung dynasty again found the Shwedagon Pagoda in a state of dilapidation and raised it to its present height of 99 meters in the process of renovation. The earliest surviving picture of the Shwedagon, an engraving print made in 1825 by Lieutenant Joseph Moore of Her Majesty's 89th Regiment, shows the Shwedagon in roughly the same state that it exists today. The last major addition to the Shwedagon Pagoda occurred in 1871 when a new tea, or umbrella crown, was donated by King Mindon Hti shortly before his son Tiba succeeded him and destroyed the country. King Mindon's tea stayed at the top of the Shwedagon until it began to noticeably deteriorate in 1999. The tea looks small from the ground, but if you go inside the pagoda made from the skeleton of King Mindon's old tea and look up, way up, you can see that it's really the size of a small building. There are hundreds of depictions of the Buddha at Shwedagon. It's impossible to cover them all, but I will try to cover the most important ones. The 4 Buddhas in the cave shrines on the east, south, west, and north of the Shwedagon represent the 4 Buddhas of the present Kalpa, or historical eon, and were donated by King Singu Min in the mid-18th century. 3 of the 4 images are made from a 5-metal alloy that was thought to be suitable for holy relics, consisting of gold, silver, copper, iron, and lead. The Kakusandha Buddha is the oldest Buddha of our Kalpa mentioned in the Pali Canon, the oldest Buddhist sutra. Kakusandha was born in what is now Nepal. The Pali Canon states that he lived to a very old age before attaining enlightenment under a sarissa tree, after which he gave a sermon to 84,000 monks in a nearby park. While still alive, he met King Kema while the king was donating alms to him and foretold that he would become Gautama Buddha in a future life. The site of Kakusandha Buddha's birth was visited by Emperor Asoka in the 3rd century BC, and the stone pillar he left behind to mark this event is the oldest archaeological evidence that Kakusandha Buddha was widely venerated in antiquity. The Shwedagon Pagoda is said to contain the staff of Kakusandha Buddha. His image is in the pagoda's eastern cave shrine. According to the Pali Canon, Kongammana is the 2nd Buddha of the present Kalpa. He was born into a royal family in modern-day Nepal. After his first son was born, he renounced the world, riding out of his palace on the back of an elephant, eventually attracting an entourage of 30,000 ascetics. It's said that he attained enlightenment while meditating under a great Bodhi tree after concentrating his energy in 4 levels, which Kakusandha had also done. After his enlightenment, he is said to have given many servants, both to Brahmins and various spiritual beings, to help them also achieve enlightenment. The site of Kongammana Buddha's birth was visited by Emperor Asoka in 249 BC, and the stone pillar he left behind to mark the event is the oldest archaeological evidence that Kongammana Buddha was widely venerated in antiquity. The Shwedagon Pagoda is said to contain the water filter of Kongammana Buddha. His image is in the pagoda's eastern cave shrine. Kassapa Buddha was born into a royal family in Varanasi, India. The Pali Canon states that, before seeking enlightenment, he lived in 3 different palaces. After renouncing the world, he only lived as an ascetic for 7 days before attaining enlightenment under a banyan tree. He only held 1 assembly of disciples, a group of monks who had agreed to also renounce the world in his company. The Shwedagon Pagoda is said to contain a piece of the robe of Kassapa Buddha. His image is in the pagoda's eastern cave shrine. Unlike the other images of the other 3 Buddhas of the present Kalpa, this image is made of stone, since the original one donated by King Singu was damaged in a fire. Gautama is generally considered the founder of Buddhism, and is the figure that most people recognize as the Buddha. He was born into a royal family in modern Nepal, but renounced the world after the birth of his first son, and became an ascetic. He traveled around the Gangetic Plain, teaching and building a religious community. He is said to have attained his enlightenment after meditating for 7 years under a Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, India. He gave his first sermon in Sarnath, the traditional origin of the first Buddhist community. The Pali Canon, the oldest Buddhist sutra and known biography of the Buddha, was not written down until 29 BC, but most historians date Gautama's birth to sometime around the late 6th century BC, a little over 2,500 years ago. The traditional site of Gautama Buddha's birth was visited by Emperor Asoka in the mid-3rd century BC, and the stone pillar he left behind to mark the event is the oldest archaeological evidence that the details of Gautama Buddha's life were generally recognized at that time. The Shwedagon Pagoda is said to contain 8 hairs from Gautama Buddha. This image of him is in the pagoda's eastern cave shrine. There are hundreds of representations of Gautama Buddha around the Shwedagon. Let's look at some of the more interesting representations of Gautama Buddha around the grounds. It's said that the mystic Wazar, Boboong, donated this statue. It's reputed to have magic rubies in its forehead and eyes, making it more likely that it will grant the wishes of its petitioners. The statue used to be outside the Shwedagon, but after Tan Shwe became the military dictator of Burma in the 2000s, there was a rash of thefts from monasteries of artifacts reputed to have magical powers. Ever since that time, the monks of the Shwedagon have kept it hidden inside the Shwedagon for fear of it being stolen, and have a live video feed of it broadcast to the surface all day long. People say that the face of this Jade Buddha was carved to resemble the face of former military dictator Tan Shwe, though, if true, the reason can only be speculated upon. Some people say it is related to black magic. I heard one person say that it reflects Tan Shwe's ambition to be reborn as the Maitreya. perhaps in a manner of thinking similar to that of King Bado. Whether it's appropriate to have such an artifact on display is up to the interpretation of the viewer. They say that this Buddha image was taken to England following the Second Anglo-Burmese War in 1853, but then it was returned after Burma became independent in 1947. They seem to have kept it pretty safe. This is a fairly typical representation of a reclining Buddha, a major theme in Buddhist art. These statues depict the last moments of Buddha's life before he entered nirvana. The first community of Buddhists to depict him realistically in art, as a man, were Greeks living in Central Asia starting around the 1st century AD, and the artistic theme of the reclining Buddha originated and became popular there at that time. So the reclining Buddha is one of the oldest known ways of depicting the Buddha artistically. When King Alongpaya, the founder of the Kambang dynasty, conquered Arakan in 1785, he looted its capital, Mrauk U, for slaves and plunder, eventually relocating everything and everyone of value to places more favorable to him. This statue was taken from Mrauk U at that time and eventually found its way here to the Shwedagon. In this way, it is a relative of the more famous Mahamuni Buddha statue in Mandalay. Don't feel too bad for the old kingdom of Mrauk U. For centuries before its fall, the kingdom grew rich by raiding the eastern coast of India for slaves. This Buddha statue is said to contain a magic ruby in its forehead. The local people believe that, because of the power of this gem, the statue has the power to grant wishes. This Buddha statue was donated by Shin Sawbu of Hintawadi over 500 years ago. She ruled for 17 years in the 15th century as Queen Regent, after which she retired to live a life of religious contemplation next to the Shwedagon. Along with this statue, she is said to have given many treasures to the pagoda, including once donating her entire body weight in gold leaf. It's said that this Buddha statue is an especially popular site of veneration for women. The flowers of the tree next to the statue she donated are said to have been her favorite. King Dhamazeddi of Hintawadi was the successor that Shin Sawbu chose when she retired, and went on to become one of the most successful rulers in Burmese history. These stones were made in his reign during the late 15th century, and are one of the first historical mentions of the Shwedagon to survive. They were originally located farther down the hill the Shwedagon is built on, but were moved to this location in 1984. The stones are inscribed in Mon, Bamar, and Pali, and describe the history of the Shwedagon as it was known at that time. King Dhamazeddi also donated a few Buddha statues to the pagoda, which you can find if you visit. In Burmese artistic tradition, the moon is often depicted as a rabbit, while the sun is often depicted as a peacock, as shown here above this Buddha image. Big pagodas, like the Shwedagon, might have one or more stones taken from spiritual places like Mount Popa or Mandalay Hill, which are assumed to have magical powers. After the supplicant prays for something to an image of the Buddha, he may ask the Buddha, "If my request will come true, make the stone heavier." The supplicant will then lift the stone 3 times, and if the stone gets heavier by the 3rd time, he can be assured that his request will come true. This Sun-Moon Buddha image has 3 stones which a supplicant can lift in turn, rather than just lifting 1 stone 3 times. This spot marks the place where, in 1920, several young nationalists met to protest the establishment of a national school system which would soon go on to become the best in Southeast Asia, on the grounds that the nation's schools would be funded by the government and missionary societies, rather than private Burmese institutions, and that Burmese nationalism would not be part of the curriculum. The subsequent student strike is generally considered the beginning of the Burmese nationalist movement that established Burma's independent national government 27 years later. This small temple in the Shwedagon is interesting because it is obviously Chinese, and because most Chinese Buddhists are not Theravada Buddhists like the Burmese. It even has 2 furnaces for burning ghost money, which is not a tradition that Burmese people have and which probably no one here uses. At the top of the ghost money furnace is the 2nd son of the dragon, Chirwun, who's often placed above flammable things like wooden building and furnaces, since he has the ability to control water. My bias is that the Chinese shrine must have been donated by someone from either Hong Kong or Taiwan and not the mainland, but there is a recreation of a Buddha's tooth relic donated from an organization in Shanghai here, so it really could have come from anywhere. These boys and their families are walking in a procession as part of a ritual to temporarily join a monastery as a monk. Traditionally, all boys in Burma will join a monastery twice in their lives, when they are 5 and 19 years old, for a period ranging from a few days to a few weeks. If their families can afford it, they will hold a special ceremony to mark the occasion. For the parents, sponsoring such a ceremony is a good way to build karmic merit, and for the children it symbolizes the passage from one age group to the next. Historically, the ceremony is supposed to symbolize the renunciation of worldly pleasures by Gautama, and the later ordination of his son, Prince Rahula. I've heard that in some of the poorer areas of Burma, the time that children spend in their monasteries is the first and perhaps only time that they are taught to read and write. This was rumored to have been the case for the famous opium warlord, Khun Sa. After joining a monastery for the first time, all new monks need to learn how to tie their robes. This monk is teaching a young novitiate how to tie his robe. These Buddhist nuns asked to chant a blessing for me in Pali, the language that Gautama Buddha spoke. Hopefully it worked. This monk's unusual cap identifies him as a Yathae, or hermit monk, a special monk who seeks enlightenment by living an ascetic lifestyle alone in the wilderness. Unlike normal monks, they don't follow the same number or type of rules governing their behavior. For example, they can marry, eat whatever or whenever they want, and grow their hair long, or grow a beard. They have no initiation ceremony and are not ordained by or associated with any monastery. Some people believe they gain psychic powers through their meditations and mystical practices. They focus more on mystical religious experiences more than typical monks, and, you might be able to tell, compared to other monks, they may seem a bit eccentric. It's customary to take a piece of wood to ring a bell in order to gain spiritual merit when visiting a holy place, such as the Shwedagon. Traditionally, people will ring a bell like this 3 times, though, as my friend here demonstrates, it's perfectly acceptable to ring it as many times as you would like. There are a few very large bells on the site. The largest one, shown here, weighs 42 tons and was donated by King Tarawadi Min in 1841. Deep below the Shwedagon, there is a maze of tunnels, through which flows at least one underground stream. This well goes straight down into the water. People say that one day, a young novice monk was playing on the well and fell in, after which he turned to stone, the remains of which can still be seen underground in the caverns today. After this event, the well was closed, though I'm told you can still throw some coins in to make a wish. This building is supposed to be modeled on the structure that was built in Bodh Gaya, the place where Gautama gained enlightenment. It displays many scenes from Gautama's life. It's said that, before constructing the Shwedagon, King Okalapa built this smaller pagoda nearby in order to house the 8 hairs of the Buddha until the Shwedagon was complete. Many Burmese people enjoy chewing betel nut, a kind of stimulant produced by the betel palm. It's somewhat analogous to chewing tobacco in terms of its effects physiologically and to one's oral health. There's only one betel palm on the grounds of the Shwedagon, shown here. If you've gotten to the end of this tour, thank you for watching. If you want to correct or ask for clarification on something said in the video, please make your request in the comments. Subscribe to this channel to receive notifications for the subsequent video in this series. In our next video, we will explore the history and culture of Myanmar through examining the many creatures peculiar to Burmese folklore displayed on the grounds of the Shwedagon Pagoda.